Hello and welcome, Immutables, to the August Town Hall. Today we're going to do a deep dive into Immutable's product strategy and just precisely why we're making the technical choices that we are in order to build the best possible product for Web3 game developers, but more importantly, to achieve our mission of bringing digital ownership to the world, starting with gaming. So without further ado, let's dive in. So I'm going to jump through a few things. First, recapping the big wins from the last cycle, our last 4 months as Immutable. Second, quick state of the market, a shout out to our community hero program. And finally, deep dive into the product strategy. Shouldn't take longer than 15, 20 minutes overall. What did we accomplish last cycle? It was probably our biggest ever. We had a major partnership with Polygon. We onboarded more games in the last month than we ever have in the company's lifetime. We had Gods Unchained launch on the Epic Games Store, and we have our 3 games on track for launch. In particular, I wanted to shout out Guild of Guardians. So the team's internal metric for success for their beautiful corner demo, which is essentially, think, just a gameplay loop of the game. So there's none of the meta design that encourages people to stick around for weeks. We had an initial test goal of more than 40% of people would play for a certain period of time. And 93% of people ended up doing that. In fact, more than 80% of people ended up playing for more than 4 hours. We had a D3, a day 3 retention metric, which we meant to be measuring 3 months from now for where the game would be, which we hit even with this internal demo. So we're really, really excited about the quality of this game. I think it's going to be a massive launch and very proud of what the team has achieved here. We had the massive spotlight at Game Developer Conference for Shardbound with some really great reception and infinite victory. We had the PC builds and the Android and iOS builds come out. I wanted to share some quick community thoughts on Guild of Guardians so far, but basically probably the best reaction we could have hoped from the community. I'm really thrilled with the place of this, and the pace of feedback and iteration in the game development cycle we're seeing right now is really, really quick. Feedback from the community that we're taking in is literally being shipped into the game in a week. So I'm excited about this continuous cycle and just how good we can get these retention stats over the next few months. On the onboarding side and marketing to games, we had more than 2,500 games signed to our developer hub to start building over the last 4 months, and vastly exceeding our expectations. In June, we had the biggest month ever of onboarding games on record, of course, off the back of our Polygon partnership and the launch of Immutable ZK EVM. And I think we've also seen a really interesting couple of months in crypto overall. We've had a user acquisition strategy proven out in the real world for the first time via tokens. I think this is the most interesting application of UA probably since SushiSwap executed their vampire attack, and validates a lot of these theses around how can tokens be used in order to basically replace the billions of dollars that games currently have to spend performance marketing. And instead, every single player or user can be an owner of this collective goal and be incentivized to share it themselves. We think it can be a vastly more efficient model, and really excited to see how this plays out both at Immutable and more broadly in the sector. Asia has continued to double down on their thoughts. So you have the Japanese Prime Minister basically saying at the WebEx conference that Web3 is the new form of capitalism, and that they're creating a direct environment for Web3 that can be incredibly friendly to Web3 games. We're really excited about what Fumio is doing in Japan. And obviously we have PayPal launching their dollar-backed stablecoin in one of the biggest, probably Web2 adoption instances in the last 2 years. And of course, the landmark Ripple case, which gave people a lot of regulatory clarity and not yet to where we want to be, but I think a very good step in the right direction. A quick shout out to Tomahawk, who has been doing essentially a hero shout out every single week, where he's showcasing an active gamer or community contributor on any Immutable project. We are watching these community programs closely, so please reach out if you're doing something. We're very happy to retweet, show you some love, or give you some info so that you can start to build more of this content. Now, before we jump into product strategy, I wanted to quickly recap Immutable's strategy overall. And this is a very simple flywheel. First, win games that want to build with real economies. Second, make those games successful. Third, create a community and an army of people who demand more from what their games should give them for property ownership, and then leverage that to convince more and more games to join. And if we get this flywheel right and spinning, we've essentially created an unstoppable force to shift the current model, which is ultimately not best for players, not even best for game developers themselves, into one that is fundamentally aligned where people have true underlying property ownership. And today I wanted to talk you through some of the most important product decisions we've taken in order to help achieve this mission. So the first is, how do we actually start by winning the best games in the space? And we have two tranches to this. We have the product that we build and our go-to-market. So how do we actually take this product to customers themselves? And our goals with product is very simple. Make it incredibly simple to build a Web3 game. We think it is ridiculous that people even have to touch smart contracts today. There are compilers being used which introduce re-entrancy bugs that even a sophisticated programmer developing on will never even look at that original parts of the code. That means it's important not just to have the underlying infrastructure of your tech stack solid, but also the smart contracts that your customers are using to be solid. And the easiest way to achieve that is to have audited default templates and instead to have them interacting via APIs. And that's what we've built with Immutable, where people can choose. Do you want to build custom smart contracts, or do you want to literally use a Stripe-like service? The second is, we want to make mainstream end user purchase and trading experiences. When you come to purchase a digital asset, it should feel like double-clicking in the App Store and using Apple Pay. Until we've hit that point of frictionlessness, we have not yet succeeded. And all of our investments into checkout, into Mint, into Passport are trying to achieve that. We want to build network effects and a growing ecosystem. If you're a game and you join Immutable, you should get far more liquidity than you can anywhere else, because you are across every rollup, platform, and wallet using our unified infrastructure. And finally, and I think this is probably the most important, we have a ruthless focus on games as a use case. We aren't trying to be everything to everyone. We're not trying to cater to DeFi, to profile picture projects, to art collectibles or generative art. We are building very specific platform use cases for game developers. That means incredibly high TPS. It means security is essential and we can never really compromise. It means user experience has to be incredibly good. Because if you're a whale trying to spend $100,000 on a piece of digital art, you're probably willing to jump through some hoops. If you're competing with the tens of thousands of game developers out there who all compete on who has the most efficient user acquisition funnels, it must be incredibly easy to use. And in the go-to-market, this is very simple, and the value lies in execution. Build the world's best business development and partner success team. That means if you come to us, we can help you create a successful game easier than any other platform in the world. And more importantly, we know exactly the advice we're giving you. Unlike a lot of other blockchains or platforms where they're saying, hey, this is how you should approach things, everything we say, we do ourselves. We build 5 games internally. We're working on the front lines with the iOS store, with the Android store, with the Play Store, which means that we know what best practice is, and we're also pioneering on the economic side. And this is really how we can leverage that internal studio to build IP that we give away to every single game building on the platform. And this is the exact same strategy that obviously Valve used to sort of start with successful first-party content like Counter-Strike Go, and then leverage that into building the platform that is sort of best suited for that use case, which is Steam today. And finally, gaming focused in our go-to-market. If you're not building a game, we don't talk to you. All we care about is helping to usher in what we think is going to be the first mainstream use case of crypto outside of payments. The next really important part to understand to our product strategy is that vertical integration enables a lot of the magic that we are able to do. The problem with just building a platform or just building at this ZK rollup layer means that you can't actually create a unified experience if a player wants to, say, sell an item in game and buy it on a different marketplace. They can't match. Or if they want to use a wallet in one area and trade it on a different game, those two trades can't match. Or if you have a game building with a custom ZK VM, say on the Immutable Polygon stack, and they want to trade with a user who has funds on the normal general Immutable ZK VM, those two orders can't match if you're just operating at one layer of this stack. We're investing very heavily in, it doesn't matter what game, what rollup, what wallet or what marketplace or trading experience you're in, you should be able to have your liquidity unified and trade with anyone with an incredibly simple user experience. And what that is doing is creating this giant pool of liquidity and volume that everyone can tap into to make players get the best possible price and game developers get the best possible volume and access to an ecosystem. And to build this, we have an entire cohort of products. We have our Passport, we have our Orderbook, blockchain data APIs, NFT trading, minting, checkout, dev hub, gaming SDKs, and of course, what we're building on the zero knowledge proof bridges and the relay side. And at the rollup layer, we are using both Immutable X with StarkX and Immutable ZK EVM with Polygon's open source ZK EVM tech stack. What this allows us to do is to do things like abstract all of the ZK logic combined with a swap, combined with a user transaction into a single click on Immutable Passport. And this flexibility means we can ultimately abstract away a lot of the difficulty while preserving the exact same security, no matter what rollup or what marketplace we're using. I won't go into too much detail, but we obviously offer two rollups today, Immutable ZK EVM and Immutable X. And the goal of ZK EVM is to be the first of its kind ZK rollup for games with EVM compatibility, which means that people can drag and drop code from ETH1 if they've been building there. And of course, Immutable X has been our environment, which has been running for a couple of years now with full ZK-based security, incredible scalability through Validium, and leveraging zero gas fees. One thing I'm really excited to talk about is Passport and the early metrics we're seeing on how effective this is at impacting games conversion rates, which is probably the main problem that games companies face today when building. And so what is Passport? It's our attempt at allowing someone to sign up and own their assets without even knowing they have to use NFTs or knowing what a private key is, while not compromising on self-custody. And I think that's incredibly important. At no point in time will we ever make a decision that jeopardizes the security of assets or jeopardizes the security architecture through something like allowing custodial wallets, where we're just not happy to tolerate that level of existential risk. We think there's no point in really making this shift unless people by default own their stuff, and then they can choose to make compromises if they really want to. And so what we've built is a single identity logon where you can log in literally with Google OAuth, with your email, with now Apple, and coming very soon, integrations with Unity, with Unreal, to make it even simpler. It's completely secure, so it's completely self-custodial. We use a multi-sig architecture, so you have multiple levels of protection. And we have 2FA for any high-risk transactions. So you can essentially set the amounts at which you're happy for things to be automated before you need to up the level of security or signatures for your transactions. And I'm really thrilled to share basically the internal metrics we're seeing, which is in shard bounds, we have been using this versus essentially a regular self-custodial wallet. We are already seeing a 250% increase in conversion after you use Passport. What does that mean if you're a game? It means your UA spend is literally 250% more efficient, or you can acquire players for roughly a third of the cost that you would have before, just using literally our 3-month draft of Passport. We will obsessively iterate this, and our goal is to get this to the same level of friction as when you install something on the App Store and you pay with Apple Pay. So we're really excited about this, and obviously we're going to be building out the functionality, but the main thing right now is just how do we obsessively improve this mainstream user experience? We have instant confirmations, maintain self-custodial properties, and roll this out to any game and any platform. Next, I wanted to touch on Immutable's blockchain data APIs. Not many people know about this, but we actually have incredibly robust internal blockchain data APIs that quite literally services tens of billions of transactions, is what I was told today by Alex, my co-founder and CTO. I won't go into too much detail, but this really is sort of the secret sauce behind why we're able to offer such reliable scale to a lot of people who use our products today. And just quickly touching on our Passport roadmap, we've literally just launched Passport for ZK EVM testnet. We've got StarkX obviously live in production today. Next is logging in via Unity and Unreal. After that, it's instant in-game transactions, a dashboard or a wallet you can actually use rather than being headless. And then it's everything we can do to start to grow this into a real product where you have rewards, a mobile app, game discovery, promotion, being a aggregator platform for you to find best content and games. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the global Orderbook and marketplace network. This is probably the product I am most excited about what we build in Immutable today. And this is because every single marketplace has a massive problem. If a user wants to sell an asset in the best user experience for a game, often it's going to be inside that game. You'll have someone playing Fortnite, they'll earn a skin, and they want to click sell right inside that game and get value. They don't want to necessarily navigate to the web, sign up to a marketplace, list that asset for sale, check when it's been sold, all the while they're managing their inventory and trying to play a fun game. It's a ton of friction. But the buyers will often be on these marketplaces. They have the best custom user experiences. We have things like GU decks, where you literally can buy a deck from scratch and it analyzes the delta between that deck and the cards you have. So you just pay for what you need. The reality is there are going to be thousands of trading contexts, particularly on the sell side. And there'll be a few really big marketplaces on the buy side. What we are doing is we are unifying the order books and liquidity for all of these. And it makes it way more profitable for marketplaces, but more importantly, it makes the liquidity vastly better. We are already essentially doubling liquidity through this. So we see more than 50% of all trades on Immutable protocol today are, say, listed in one area or venue and bought in another. So for example, listed inside of Gods Unchained and bought inside of Rarible or GameStop Marketplace or Token Trove. And what that means is as we have more and more games becoming sell-side liquidity providers and more marketplaces providing the best experiences, you are never compromising by creating silos of liquidity. And marketplaces can always create the best experience and take fees on the value that they're providing. And of course, we have guaranteed royalties. If you're creating an asset from scratch, you can enforce royalty payments no matter where these assets are traded, which we think is absolutely crucial to building player and game developer incentive alignment, where instead of just focusing on primary sale monetization, you can have an economy where the only way the game development makes money is by growing the size of the economy, growing the player base, and taking 5% on every trade. And we think that's a really exciting business model that is far more aligned than the current model. So is this strategy working? Well, we think so. Immutable is currently the one-stop shop for Web3 games. There is still a lot more to do, but we are incredibly proud of what the product team has built today. And the fact that we've never had any major security incident, any major brand incident, I think is a really exceptional testament to the technical choices we've made. And essentially being the first mainstream user of ZK rollups in production for games. And I wanted to show that essentially today we have over 200 games, and the genres, and those are well-funded games. We have thousands more in sort of testnet or development that we don't really track. These are games with sizable average funding, over $1 billion in funding last year, where we think they have a chance to be the next hit. And we don't have particular confidences beyond that. We roughly size ones, but ultimately our bet is if you're good enough for a hit, you're good enough for us to sell to and help you onboard to the platform and help you be incredibly successful. And the genres span everything from sports, MMO, FPS, casual, action, trading card games, and strategy games today. We're particularly excited, I think, by mobile games, games driven in Asia, where collectability is really at that core. And we think we can see some really interesting viral loops driving user acquisition via tokens and NFTs in the near term. So what is our strategy? Summed up, it's one, win the best games in the space. How do we measure this? We have this internal metric we use of total contracted value, where we've been hitting essentially record month-on-month games over the last 2 months, the number of committed games, and the status currently is we are leading the space in terms of games, building on us, now especially with this Polygon partnership, where game developers no longer have to choose between Immutable or Polygon, who previously had roughly 40% market share each, if you look at the funding stats from 2022. Second, we want to enable those games to build large user bases and healthy economies with really healthy forms of monetization. And our status here today is we're building this platform to unblock these games so that they can spend hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing and it's not wasted. That is critical. Second, We're waiting for these games to launch over the next year as they go into production after they've been invested and built in over the past 2 years. And third, we're pioneering our own games with Immutable Studios. So we know exactly what kind of pitfalls they'll face, what kind of economy and growth tactics work based on NFTs and tokens. And third, how do we maximize value for those users and economies once all of this is mature and up and running? And I wanted to share this quick example of the sheer velocity in the middle of a flat market that Immutable is seeing in terms of demand from Web 2 and Web 3 game developers. And the really exciting thing is that this is not happening because they want to make a quick buck on primary sales. This is happening because they want to create a genuine long-term ongoing economy. So even with net numbers up, the actual percentage of those games that are genuine game developers that have experience in building previous successful games and that are here for the long run is even higher. To summarize our strategy in 4 points, get a single hit. The first hit will define economy design for the entire space, will usher in an insane amount of attention, potentially the next bull market, depending on who you ask. But more importantly, gaming is entire power law driven. The biggest game is going to have more users than the rest of them combined, and so on and so forth. The second will have more than the third, and the rest combined. Counter-Strike Go alone has done more than $32 billion in volume over the last 3 years. Goal number 2, maximize value for these economies by optimizing their designs and for the players themselves. Once we have this up and running, we can start to focus on how do we get this finessed and develop the playbooks that everyone else can copy. And number 3, giant partnerships. As soon as you have a model that says you can provably, as a game developer, make far more money, have a much more aligned ecosystem, have much better growth statistics by using this than by not, as soon as you have those provable use cases, the game is no longer, hey, who wants to build a Web3 game? How do we convince you to build on us? The game is we go to every single games company in the world, the largest, and we say, this is exactly why you should be doing this. Here's the science, here's the data, here's the evidence of games that have been successful before. That's what we've seen in every significant shift in gaming, and we're ready to blitzscale as soon as that is happening. And last but not least, gaming is not the end. There is 100 times the amount of unique value in the world than there is non-unique value. NFTs are the ability for people to have digital custody of it and have aligned incentives. And we think that beyond just gaming, it will tokenize all meaningful forms of real-world value, from term deposits to T-bills, insurance contracts, to property like physical sneakers, commodities, oil, wine, and ultimately help create far more efficient markets, far better value for everyday consumers, and digital property rights that can endure as the world becomes increasingly virtual. We think the total addressable market on this is obviously enormous. It will be a long time before this all matures, but the infrastructure we are building today is quite literally creating liquidity, security, and property rights for trillions and trillions of digital unique goods. There's 3 billion gamers, and they're each going to own thousands and thousands of items. If we can solve for this, it's pretty trivial to solve for 1 billion homes. It's pretty trivial to solve for a couple of million term deposits. So that's everything for today. Hopefully this is a really useful and candid insight into how we're building our product strategy at Immutable. We're very, very proud of the development that the product team has done over the last year. Shout out to Alex, my co-founder, who helped develop a lot of this content. And I will see you at the next community town hall. Thanks very much.